What if I told you that everything you learned in history class was basically fan fiction written by winners? From royal propaganda campaigns to fake news that went viral centuries before Twitter existed, we're about to expose 30 of the most ridiculous, stubborn, and shockingly durable myths in history. Buckle up, this is going to hurt. Myth number 1. Vikings wore horned helmets. Picture a Viking. You're seeing a massive warrior with a horned helmet, right? That iconic image plastered across every History Channel documentary and Halloween costume. Complete fabrication. There's zero archaeological evidence that Vikings ever wore horned helmets in battle. Think about it. Horns would be a tactical nightmare. One good sword swing and your enemy has a convenient handle to twist your head off. The myth was invented by costume designers for an 1876 opera production of Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen. They thought it looked dramatic and barbaric. It worked so well that it became permanently cemented in our collective imagination. Vikings were terrifying enough without the ridiculous headgear. Myth number 2. Napoleon was short. Napoleon complex exists because everyone knows Napoleon was a tiny, insecure dictator compensating for his height. The truth is, he was actually average height for his time, around 5'7". The confusion came from French measurements versus British ones. In French units, he was 5'2", but that translated to 5'7" in British imperial measurements. British propaganda seized on this confusion and ran with it, depicting him as a tiny tyrant in political cartoons. It was a brilliant smear campaign that worked for over 200 years. The real Napoleon probably stood eye to eye with most men of his era, but don't let facts ruin a good insult. Myth number 3. Medieval chastity belts. The medieval chastity belt, that locked metal device ensuring female fidelity during the Crusades, is perhaps the most absurd myth about the Middle Ages. These devices would cause infections, be impossible to wear for extended periods, and are completely absent from medieval literature or art. They were actually 19th century hoaxes, either created as curiosities or misidentified torture devices. The Victorians were obsessed with portraying medieval people as barbaric and sexually repressed, so they invented this perfect symbol of both. Medieval people had plenty of actual problems without adding genital padlocks to the mix. Myth number 4. Edison invented the light bulb. Thomas Edison gets credit for inventing the light bulb, but he was actually about the 23rd person to create a functioning incandescent light. What Edison did was improve the design and, more importantly, create a complete electrical system to power it and market the hell out of it. He was less inventor, more brilliant businessman who knew how to patent everything and crush competition. The real pioneer was British inventor Joseph Swan, who demonstrated a working bulb a year before Edison. But Edison had better lawyers and better PR, so history remembers him as the genius with the light bulb moment. Myth number 5. Carrots give you night vision. During World War II, the British Royal Air Force spread propaganda that their pilots ate lots of carrots to explain their uncanny ability to shoot down German planes at night. The real secret? Radar technology they wanted to keep hidden from the Nazis. The myth was so successful that it persists today. Parents still tell kids to eat carrots for better eyesight. Carrots do contain vitamin A, which is good for eye health, but they won't turn you into a nocturnal predator. The British just needed a cover story for their technological advantage, and somehow eat your vegetables became eternal. Myth number 6. Poinsettias are deadly poisonous. Every Christmas season, panic sets in about keeping poinsettias away from kids and pets because they're supposedly lethally toxic. Parents treat them like botanical assassins. The truth is, they're about as dangerous as a regular houseplant. A study by the American Journal of Emergency Medicine reviewed over 22,000 poinsettia exposure cases and found no fatalities. At worst, they might cause mild stomach upset if you eat a huge amount. A child would need to consume about 500 leaves to have serious problems. The myth started from a single, unverified case from 1919 where a child supposedly died after eating poinsettia leaves, a story that was never actually proven. For over a century, we've been terrified of a plant that's basically harmless. Your cat is in more danger from your chocolate than your Christmas decorations. Myth number 7. The Forbidden City was forbidden to everyone. The name suggests this was some impenetrable fortress where no commoner ever set foot. In reality, the Forbidden City was a functioning government complex where thousands of people worked daily: officials, servants, guards, craftsmen, and merchants. What was actually forbidden was entering without permission or business, which is pretty standard for any government building. It wasn't some mystical realm closed to all outsiders, it was bureaucracy with better architecture. The dramatic name was mostly a translation issue that made it sound way more exclusive than it was. Myth number 8. Witches were burned at the stake in Salem. The Salem witch trials are infamous, but here's what didn't happen: burning people at the stake. That was a European thing. In Salem, Massachusetts, accused witches were hanged. 19 people were executed by hanging, and one man was pressed to death under heavy stones because he refused to enter a plea. The burning myth probably comes from confusion with European witch hunts or general Hollywood dramatization. Salem was tragic enough without adding incorrect execution methods. The real horror was the mass hysteria, forced confessions, and neighbors turning on each other, not the specific method of killing. Myth number 9. Medieval people thought the earth was flat. This is the big one. The myth that medieval people believed in a flat earth is history's greatest lie. Educated people had known Earth was spherical since ancient Greece, over 1,000 years before Columbus. The flat Earth myth was invented in the 1800s to make medieval people look stupid and superstitious. Columbus's critics weren't worried he'd sail off the edge of the world. They correctly argued his calculations were terrible and the Earth was much bigger than he thought. They were actually right. If America hadn't been in the way, Columbus and his crew would have starved in the Pacific. The Columbus proved Earth was round story was propaganda to make him look like a lone genius fighting ignorance. Myth number 10. Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake." The most famous quote attributed to Marie Antoinette perfectly captures tone-deaf aristocracy. When told peasants had no bread, she allegedly replied, "Let them eat cake." It's the ultimate symbol of royal disconnect from reality. She never said it. The phrase appeared in writings by philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau when Marie Antoinette was still a child. It was later attributed to her as revolutionary propaganda to justify her execution. She had plenty of actual faults, but this particular piece of callousness was fake news designed to make the public hate her even more. Myth number 11. The Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock is a cornerstone of American mythology, the exact spot where the Pilgrims first set foot in the New World. Except there's no contemporary account of this ever happening. The rock wasn't mentioned in any Pilgrim journals or letters. The Plymouth Rock story was invented 121 years after the landing by a 95-year-old man claiming his father told him about it. By then, everyone who could verify or dispute the claim was long dead. It became a tourist attraction and patriotic symbol despite being historically worthless. The Pilgrims definitely landed in Plymouth, but the specific rock is fan fiction. Myth number 12. Gladiators fought to the death every time. Hollywood has convinced us that every gladiator fight ended with a dramatic thumbs down and death. The reality, most gladiators were valuable investments, trained athletes who generated huge revenue. Killing them constantly would be like demolishing race cars after every NASCAR event. Deaths happened, but they were the exception, not the rule. Gladiators were slaves or criminals, but they were also specialized entertainers. Matches were refereed, had rules, and often ended with first blood or submission. The thumbs up, thumbs down thing? Also mostly Hollywood invention. We don't actually know what gestures Roman crowds used for mercy or death. Myth number 13. Thanksgiving happened on one day. The American Thanksgiving story presents a single harmonious feast between Pilgrims and Native Americans in 1621. The real harvest celebration lasted 3 days, and the relationship between colonists and Wampanoag was far more complex than one friendly dinner. What we celebrate as Thanksgiving wasn't even called that at the time, and wasn't repeated annually. It became a national holiday in 1863 when Lincoln needed to unite the country during the Civil War. The wholesome origin story was sanitized, simplified, and packaged for national consumption, erasing the subsequent devastating impact of colonization on native peoples. Myth number 14. Mice love cheese. Cartoons have drilled this into our heads. Mice go crazy for cheese. Set a mousetrap with cheese and you're guaranteed a catch. But mice actually prefer grains, fruits, and seeds, foods they'd naturally encounter. They'll eat cheese if starving, but it's not their favorite food. The myth likely started because in the days before refrigeration, cheese was stored in pantries and cellars where mice lived. Mice ate it because it was available, not because they craved it. Modern science shows mice prefer a peanut butter or chocolate as bait. Tom and Jerry lied to us. Myth number 15. Bulls hate the color red. Bullfighting has convinced the world that bulls are enraged by red capes. Here's the problem. Bulls are colorblind to red. They see it as a shade of gray or yellow. What actually irritates the bull is the movement of the cape being waved at them while they're already stressed and confused in an arena. The cape is red for the human audience. It looks dramatic and hides bloodstains. The matador could wave a blue or green cape with the same effect on the bull. This myth persists because it sounds right and nobody bothers to check with a veterinary ophthalmologist. Myth number 16. Vikings discovered America, and that's a big deal. Yes, Vikings reached North America around 10 CE, centuries before Columbus. But here's what they didn't do: establish lasting contact, create ongoing trade routes, or inform the rest of Europe. They showed up, got in fights with indigenous peoples, and left. The Viking discovery didn't matter historically because nobody else knew about it. It's like discovering a restaurant but never telling anyone and never going back. Columbus's voyage, for better or worse, created permanent global contact and changed world history. The Viking discovery was historically irrelevant until archaeologists found evidence centuries later. Myth number 17. Corsets caused women to faint. Victorian women allegedly cinched their corsets so tight they couldn't breathe and constantly fainted. This myth paints a picture of women as vain, foolish, and willing to sacrifice health for appearance. The reality is far less dramatic. Properly fitted corsets were supportive undergarments, not torture devices. They distributed weight, provided back support, and were no more restrictive than modern Spanx. Did some women tighten them excessively? Sure. But the constant fainting myth was largely propaganda from men's dress reform movements who wanted to criticize women's fashion while ignoring their own uncomfortable clothing. Myth number 18. Medieval peasants only ate gruel and bread. The myth of medieval peasants surviving on bland bread and watery porridge makes the Middle Ages seem uniformly miserable. Actual peasant diets were far more varied: vegetables, legumes, dairy, eggs, occasional meat, fish, and locally foraged foods. They weren't eating gourmet meals, but they had a reasonable variety of foods depending on season and location. The bland, miserable diet myth exists because it fits our narrative of the Dark Ages as uniformly terrible. Life was hard, but it wasn't 1,000 years of flavorless suffering. Myth number 19. SOS stands for Save Our Ship. Everyone knows SOS is the universal distress signal, meaning save our ship or save our souls. Except it doesn't stand for anything. It was chosen because in Morse code, it's a simple, distinctive pattern. 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots. It was easy to transmit, easy to recognize, and hard to confuse with anything else, especially crucial in an emergency. The phrase interpretations were added later because humans can't resist creating meaning from acronyms. The maritime organizations who adopted it were very clear: it's just a signal, not an abbreviation. Myth number 20. Humans only use 10% of their brain. This myth has spawned countless movies, self-help books, and the belief that we're all walking around with 90% unused brain capacity. Neuroscience has thoroughly debunked this. Brain scans show we use all parts of our brain, just not all at once. The myth probably originated from a misunderstanding of early neurology research or motivational speakers who needed a hook. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, but uses 20% of your energy. Evolution wouldn't maintain a massive, expensive organ that's 90% dead weight. You're already using all your brain, it's just not making you telekinetic. Myth number 21. Cinco de Mayo is Mexican Independence Day? Americans celebrate Cinco de Mayo with margaritas and tacos, assuming it's Mexico's Independence Day. It's not. Mexican Independence Day is September 16th. Cinco de Mayo commemorates a single battle victory against the French in 1862, the Battle of Puebla. It's a relatively minor holiday in Mexico, but somehow became a huge celebration in the United States, largely due to beer company marketing in the 1980s. It's basically been transformed into drink Mexican beer and eat tacos day with minimal connection to its actual historical meaning. Mexico's real Independence Day barely registers in American consciousness. Myth number 22. Humans and dinosaurs coexisted. Polls consistently show a shocking number of people believe humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time. They didn't, not even close. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Humans emerged around 300,000 years ago. To put this in perspective, more time separates Stegosaurus from Tyrannosaurus rex than separates T-Rex from humans. The myth persists thanks to movies like The Flintstones, religious beliefs in young Earth creationism, and general confusion about prehistory. No human ever saw a dinosaur except as a fossil. Myth number 23. Different tongue regions taste different flavors. Remember that tongue map from school showing bitter at the back, sweet at the tip, sour on the sides? Completely false. All taste buds can detect all flavors: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. The myth came from a mistranslation of a German thesis from 1901, which showed subtle differences in sensitivity across the tongue, not exclusive zones. This mistranslation got into textbooks and became fact for over a century. Your entire tongue tastes everything. Those diagrams were wrong, but they looked scientific enough that nobody questioned them. Myth number 24. Fortune cookies are Chinese. Walk into any Chinese restaurant in America and you'll get a fortune cookie. They must be ancient Chinese tradition, right? Wrong. Fortune cookies were invented in California in the early 1900s, probably by Japanese immigrants. They were inspired by Japanese crackers, not Chinese tradition. When Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps during World War II, Chinese restaurant owners adopted them. If you go to China and ask for a fortune cookie, they'll look at you like you're crazy. They're about as Chinese as chop suey and orange chicken. Pure American invention. Myth number 25. Undercover officers must admit they're cops if asked. This myth has been the downfall of countless TV crime plots, and probably some actual criminals. People believe that if you ask an undercover officer, "Are you a cop?" they legally must tell you the truth. Nope. Undercover officers can absolutely lie about their identity. That's literally their job. This isn't entrapment. Entrapment is when police induce someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. Lying about being a cop while investigating ongoing criminal activity is perfectly legal. This myth probably survives because criminals want to believe there's an easy test to identify undercover officers. Myth number 26. Goldfish have 3-second memories. Goldfish are the butt of every memory joke, supposedly forgetting everything every 3 seconds. Research shows goldfish can actually remember things from months. They can be trained to respond to signals, recognize their owners, and navigate mazes. They're not geniuses, but they're not swimming around in a perpetual state of existential amnesia either. The myth probably persists because it makes us feel better about keeping them in tiny bowls. If they can't remember anything, maybe they don't mind their depressing living conditions, right? Wrong. They remember, and they definitely need bigger tanks. Myth number 27. Shaving makes hair grow back thicker. Generations of teens have been told that shaving will make hair grow back darker and thicker. It doesn't. Shaving cuts hair at the surface. It doesn't affect the follicle beneath the skin where growth occurs. The illusion happens because uncut hair has a tapered end, while cut hair has a blunt edge that feels coarser. Also, hair that's been sheltered under skin is softer than hair exposed to sun and elements. When you shave and it grows back, you're feeling that blunt edge and unexposed hair, making it seem thicker. It's not. Biology doesn't work on reverse psychology. Myth 28. Lightning never strikes twice. This saying is meant to comfort people about rare bad luck repeating. Unfortunately, it's meteorologically false. Lightning absolutely strikes the same place multiple times, especially tall structures that provide a good path to ground. The Empire State Building gets struck about 25 times per year. Park Ranger Roy Sullivan was struck by lightning 7 separate times in his life and survived all of them. Lightning doesn't have a memory or a fairness algorithm. It follows physics. If a location provides a good electrical pathway, it will keep getting struck. Myth 29. Crime rates are rising. Ask most people and they'll tell you crime is worse than ever. We're constantly bombarded with news about violence and chaos. The reality? In most developed nations, violent crime has been declining for decades. Crime rates in the United States peaked in the early 1990s and have dropped significantly since then. We just hear about crime more because of 24-hour news cycles, social media, and the availability bias. We remember dramatic negative events more than the thousands of uneventful days. The world isn't getting more dangerous, our perception of danger is being amplified. Myth number 30. You need to wait 24 hours to report a missing person. In countless TV shows and movies, police tell worried people they can't file a missing person report for 24 hours. This is dangerously false. There's no waiting period for reporting someone missing in the United States or most countries. This myth may have originated from police trying to avoid paperwork for adults who temporarily lost contact, but it's never been an actual law. The first hours of a disappearance are crucial for investigation. If someone is genuinely missing and potentially in danger, report it immediately. The police might not launch a full investigation instantly for an adult who missed dinner, but there's no mandatory waiting period. So, there you have it. History is essentially a group project where half the team made everything up and the rest didn't bother fact-checking. Which of these myths would you keep just because it makes the story better? Drop your answers in the comments, and if your brain feels slightly betrayed but thoroughly entertained, smash that like button and subscribe for more uncomfortable truths about everything you thought you knew.